let's talk about some interesting things I've seen in Colombia. Hi all, I'm Ezrado and you're watching my travel channel where I talk all things Colombia. Today I got a bit of a light-hearted video for you as I wanted to share with you some wacky surprises I had in Colombia. Obviously, with any country you visit, there are going to be things that are different and perhaps take you by surprise and may even seem a little strange to you. And you know, I know it can often be seen as a taboo to bring these thoughts up for fear of appearing culturally insensitive, but at the end of the day, I don't think there's any shame in admitting that every country has their differences. That's not to say that anyone's got it all backwards. I mean, yeah, there are bad things in every country, but for the stuff on this list at least, I'm not talking about anything that's necessarily bad. I'm just talking about things that are quite different to anything I've seen before. So in that spirit, here are 5 things that I found a little peculiar in Colombia. First up, let's start with a certain conversational custom that caught me off guard at first, but is honestly something I've grown quite fond of. I'm talking about the phrase te quiero. If you type this into a translator, you'll find that it translates to I love you in English, and although this is technically correct, there's some important context that's missing. See, in Colombia, saying I love you using the phrase te quiero doesn't necessarily imply that you have romantic feelings for someone. Now, this still isn't entirely different to English. I mean, I'm sure you're probably familiar with also using the words I love you with close family members other than your spouse as well, obviously not romantically, I hope, but to signify a familial bond. The difference with te quiero though is that it can also be said outside of the family, like among friends for instance. And I know even then you do often see young women saying this to each other in English as well as a casual banter thing, but I'd say te quiero, it extends even beyond that. Like, you can make very liberal use of this phrase with anyone you deem as a friend, honestly, and it can be as casual or as meaningful as you want it to be. I suppose it'd be a little rare to hear it among 2 guys, but a guy and a woman who are friends, yeah, absolutely. You could sort of equate it to the custom of kissing someone on the cheek when you greet them. Like, when it comes to that in non-romantic context, you generally see it with 2 women or 2 people of the opposite sex, and it's more or less the same thing with saying te quiero. Anyway, of course, in English, it might seem a little strange to say I love you in different contexts like this, as there isn't really any convention in place for telling people you love them outside of romance, familial bonds, or casual girlfriend banter. In Colombia, though, the concept of telling someone you like them like this is built right into their conversational customs. Now, yeah, this is of course a Spanish phrase, so it's by no means exclusive to Colombia, but in terms of how much it's used in the country, I can say from experience that it's not rare at all, and I think that speaks to how socially oriented Colombians are. I should also add that there is another phrase, te amo, which is more specific to romance and a deeper kind of love if you're looking to make that distinction with someone special as well. Alright, moving on to the second peculiar thing I've seen in Colombia, let's talk about bootlegs. Now, I'm sure if you've visited many second or third world countries before, this probably won't come as a shock to you, and I guess if I took the time to think about it, it probably shouldn't have for me either. But still, I don't think anything could quite prepare me for the sheer breadth of this. To put it simply, there are a lot of knockoffs in Colombia, whether it's unofficially branded clothing items, unlicensed pop culture merchandise, or just all-around unauthorized uses of IP across restaurants, live shows, and cruise ships. I can kind of see why a lot of copyright lawyers don't even bother patrolling Colombia, because, I mean, where do you even start? Now, I had seen this a little bit in Brazil before, but I was only there for a few weeks, so the scale of it never quite hit home until I stayed in Colombia for several months. I think what really surprised me about this though was just how brazen it all is. Like, it's one thing to see some unofficial plushies being sold on the side of the road, which, don't get me wrong, you see a lot of, but it's another thing to see a restaurant literally called Mario Brothers with Mario renders all over the storefront and tables in the food court of a popular commercial shopping mall. I mean, you gotta remember, Colombia's not like a full-on third world country, it's more like second world, and a lot of these shopping malls feel very similar to what you'd see in a first world country, so then when you come across something like this, it's like, oh wow, that's a lawsuit waiting to happen. Except it isn't, because as I said before, there's just so much of this that it's impossible for any company to police it. Now, in terms of whether this is a positive or negative, I guess it depends on who you are. Obviously, for the IP owners, it's kind of a nightmare, but for regular folk like you and I, it really comes down to preference. If it's very important to you that you're always buying or using the official product of a brand, then you'll just want to be careful about where you're shopping. Generally, if you're in a commercial department store like Éxito or Falabella, you can feel rest assured that everything's licensed. It's more the local stores and street vendors where you'll find these knockoffs. If you like me though, you'll find all this bootlegging quite entertaining, as you'll see things that would just never exist officially, like this figurine of Luigi playing the saxophone, or this plush toy of Sonic.exe. I mean, I did not expect to see a deep cut reference to a fan-made Sonic creepypasta being sold by a kind lady outside of the supermarket, but there you go. I could probably make a whole video about this topic, I just find it endlessly entertaining, but I'll restrain myself for now and move on to peculiar thing number 3, and that is that it's very common for guys to get manicures in Colombia. Now, if there are any hipsters or goths watching, please don't freak out. I'm not judging, I'm just saying that in most countries of the world, this isn't common for most guys. Yes, there are exceptions, this can be common in many alternative subcultures, but even then, they usually don't get a manicure done at a salon. It's usually something they do themselves, and at least from what I've seen, it often just consists of painting their nails black. As far as going to a salon for it, the guys who do this in most countries are often those with very feminine sensibilities, and that there is where this difference lies. See, in Colombia, getting manicures just isn't seen culturally as an exclusively feminine thing. I should say too, I'm not referring to getting your nails coloured, that's certainly not mainstream either for most Colombian guys. What I am referring to though is the glossing and toning of the nails so that they look shiny. I saw a nail varnish factory owner in Colombia suggest that this is likely largely due to guys wanting to impress women as opposed to the therapeutic satisfaction or anything else. He reckoned that your hands are one of the things women tend to look at most, but you know, his words not mine, so any ladies watching, I'll let you be the judge of that. To be honest, although this seems different to me based on what people do in my country, I can sort of see the logic behind it still. I mean, I'd be lying if I said I'd never looked at my nails and, you know, became a little self-conscious of it if they're grubby, particularly if I'm with someone who I want to leave a good impression on. So yeah, I'll let you decide what to make of this one, but at the very least, it is culturally different to a lot of other countries, including my own. Okay, strange thing number 4, this is just a really quick one and something most people who aren't nerds like me will probably never think about. But let's talk about TVs, and specifically TV placement. Yeah, I know, really getting into some minutiae here, but answer me this. When you or anyone in your country buys a TV, whereabouts do you set it up? And I don't mean like what room do you put it in, I mean specifically where in the room do you place it? Well, I'm gonna hazard a guess here and say the vast majority of the time, you're probably gonna put it on a cabinet or mount it on a wall in a spot where it's roughly level with your eye line when you sit down. In some cases, it might be the tiniest bit higher than your eye line if you have a lower couch like mine, but usually not excessively so. In Colombia though, this often isn't the case. It's actually common to see people mount their TVs close to the ceiling, so when you're sitting down, you're literally having to tilt your head like this in order to be able to watch anything. And I mean, yeah, I know first world problems much, but still, I don't quite understand what the reasoning behind this is. In most countries, including my own, if you see a TV mounted this way, it's probably in a hotel, a bar or pub or some kind of function center, but I don't know if I've ever seen this in an actual person's home. Now to be fair, it's not everyone who does this in Colombia, but still, this is something I saw in most of the homes I visited. I guess they could be doing this to make the TV more discreet or free up some wall space, but I tend to doubt that as minimalism isn't exactly a prevalent design philosophy in Colombia. So yeah, why people do this, who knows? And I apologize for the sudden lighting and angle change. I just come back a few days later to redo this part as I thought of a 5th point that's much better than what I originally had. And that is that many Colombians live with their parents well into adulthood. Whilst not everyone or even most people do this, I have seen it before where there'll be someone who's middle-aged and they're still living at home. To be fair, this doesn't necessarily mean that these people are overly dependent or lacking in self-sufficiency on a behavioural level. Oftentimes it can actually be just due to financial reasons where they'll be providing for their parents in the cost of living, particularly in families where money's a little tight. Colombia as a whole though isn't a first world country, and so these kinds of financial situations can be quite common. Besides far lower wages, Colombia doesn't really have much in the way of social welfare or government support infrastructure for adults who are struggling, like you'd see in Australia for instance. Because of this, the responsibility is placed more on the family to provide, as individuals have less means of living independently if they're not earning a good wage. Now that all might sound fairly logical, but I would still say that there is a cultural element to this practice of living with parents into adulthood that goes beyond just financial reasoning. I've said this before, but family in Colombia is a huge part of people's lives. In a country like my own, we have our families who are usually important to us, but a lot of our social norms really emphasize the importance of independence. Of course, this has its upsides and downsides, but one of the results is that there is often a stigma against living at home past a certain age. In Colombia though, this stigma is far less prevalent due to cultural norms that place more emphasis on intergenerational support networks and communal altruism. Just like the norms of Western countries though, these values have their upsides and downsides. Probably one of the stranger things for me personally is when I see parents assisting their adult offspring with domestic chores still, like washing their clothes or making their beds. And bear in mind, when I say adult offspring, I'm not talking about people in their 20s or even 30s, but people in their 40s and sometimes even older. I think when it comes to domestic assistance like this is where the cultural differences really become clear to me, as I'm sure you'd agree in a Western country there'd be a lot of shame associated with this kind of thing, but in Colombia it just really isn't as stigmatized. Anyway, those were 5 things I found a little peculiar in Colombia. Let me know in the comments if any of these things are more normal to you in your country, because, you know, this is all relative to me and my background, but you might have a different perspective. Otherwise, if you have any suggestion for a video topic you'd like to hear about, I'm also open to hearing that, so feel free to let me know. As always though, if you enjoyed this, like, subscribe, bell, and I'll see you in the next one. Ciao!